Hello and welcome to the Socially Numb podcast. I am your host, Richie Leahy. Today we're going to go ahead and cover a bunch of different topics, and I'm going to start with talking about the show. Now, for Socially Numb, I have been working on getting it into syndication on some of the more popular podcasting hosts like iTunes and Stitcher Radio, TuneIn, Google Play. If you know of another that you would like to see the show on, please let me know. I've done some research trying to find different avenues of where I can place the show, what apps I can get it on, things like that. I'd like to get it in as many places as possible. So I also host a Dad Strength podcast, and that's where I kind of talk more about parenting and having a kid, being a dad, and I cover topics that a lot of parents might have interest in. And I broke it out of this show just because of the general topics. I thought Socially Numb itself would be a lot more interesting if I didn't have the parenting side in. I thought that might turn people off, so it's a little bit shorter than my other show. If you're a parent, check it out. Right now it's been tailored more towards younger kids, but I figure in a few months or so, as I get caught up, it will be able to be a standalone podcast for new parents and parents in general. So as that grows, I move that to Wednesdays. I was launching both podcasts on Monday, but to do justice, I want each show to have their own in-depth show notes. And for that, I just didn't think that I could be pushing both of them in and having the podcast out by Monday. Some of the first couple podcasts came out really late Monday, and I'd like for them to be able to be live Monday evening. You can listen to them instead of listening to the horrible sports announcers while you watch some games. And maybe once I get more into the flow of the technical side, I can have each show up and running Monday morning. But as of now, I've been putting them out Monday night. That seems to work. And to give me a little bit more time and a little bit more time dedicated to each show, I'm going to be splitting up the shows that I host. And also, sociallynumb.com as a whole, I have been working on getting some of my stories up and the site put together, the finishing touches on it. I've built the site for speed, so hopefully it's fast for you, and it should perform on any device that you have, phones, tablets, computers. I want it to be a source of independent news. From a technical perspective, my background is in technology. That's what I'm an expert in. I just have a passion for gaming and sports, music, and just different culture topics. Some things like I might go into ghost stories later on, things like that, kind of do a little bit more broad approach. But Socially Numb as a whole, I want it to be kind of like an independent news outlet. And I'm going to see how far I can take it myself, running the podcast here. Try to get some guests on the show. If you like the content and you want to be a contributor, reach out to me. I can add people as guests to the show. You can write little columns. If you want to write, go ahead. I can post stuff on the site. I have been looking into getting the content from the site up on other content providers as well, not just the podcast. I've been feeling things out. I've contributed to blogs and things before in the past, but now under anonymous names and things like that. But now I'm really trying to come put my name behind it, try to build up some type of following where I can go in depth and not have the censored views you see from local sports media, where you can't call out a coach for a bad call, bad clock. You see some of the national headlines doing it, but you can't get that in-depth coverage. Now, right now, being one-man writer, I'm not going to be able to cover everything. I know that. So I'm trying to get a schedule. I'm thinking about doing like a featured game of the week where I break down technically the sport itself and doing the same thing for video games. Sort of like, not like a review, but some type of coverage on a game, how it's running, different things like that, how gaming has evolved, and looking at that. I've also talked before about gaming on a budget, where I might review games, play through, and I'm going to start putting that on the site, I think, as blog posts and news stories. It's going to go along with what my gaming systems put as their sales. I think I can work it into the news that way and get more syndication. And I said I'd keep you updated, I believe, on Apple News and getting syndicated on other website news sources. So I've looked into getting on Google News. Right now, even if I put out content each day, I have the content, I have the format, everything passes, but they only add news sources that have more than one writer. And I've talked to some people, I've had people post before on the site in its previous form, but I don't think I can have writers write frequently enough to get us in Google News. So feel free, if you want to be a writer and you have some opinions on any of the topics that I cover, reach out to me and let me know, and maybe we can go ahead and get that going. But I'd like to keep it uncensored. I do not edit the podcast itself as much. That's what the site was originally going to be, just a podcast where I cover sports and things like that. And I know podcasting isn't the greatest format for doing news. If I wanted to do that, I might do videos later on, especially covering sports, because by the time someone hears a podcast, the World Series is going on right now as I record this. Game 5, I believe. Yeah, the Indians could win tonight if they win the game. They're up 3-1 against the Cubs. Now, if I talk about the game coverage, what they need to do, till I got it posted on Monday, and then I went through and did the channels. I don't know when the next game is. I think maybe Tuesday. I think it goes back to Cleveland if the Cubs win. So then you go from there. Someone might hear the podcast. They already know the Cubs or Indians won the game. So it's a little bit in the past. So it's harder to do live coverage. I know I went through the first couple weeks. I was talking about the AP poll. That's a little bit different because it's once a week. But even with football now, they put games on Thursdays, Saturdays. So I might touch on topics like that. Football is easier of all the sports. Now, I could do my own weekly rankings for basketball or hockey or things like that, or if I did a weekly ranking, then it wouldn't matter because then I wouldn't redo it until the following week. I do know that college basketball does that, some of the media, and podcasting might work for that, but I'm going to try it out. I've also tried to do live analysis of a game. I posted a summary of the World Series Game 3 as it happened to my site, and I like having that sort of like a living article where as the game goes on, I add little tidbits of what's happening. I know social media is huge for that, so it probably won't take off, but hopefully you like reading my writing so that you can come back. I'm just trying different things. If you would like to see me do different things, let me know. I'm just trying to expand and get everything up and running as smoothly as possible now. But if you are interested in becoming a partner or a contributor, please let me know. Reach out to me. Let me know how I can help you. So today, the first topic, All Things Open, which is an open source tech conference. It held in Raleigh, North Carolina every year. Was held last week, and I attended. I attended both days, and I started to do tech coverage. This is what got me pre-approved by Apple News, so I am pre-approved for that, and I'm pre-approved for Facebook Instant Articles, I believe, and Bing News, I believe. I'm trying to think, because I don't think Yahoo News, since it got bought by Microsoft, I don't think they have their own anymore, even though the lady emailed me back and was asking questions and saying that they don't run the submission anymore. So I'm trying to expand, get news on each of those sites. So from a tech perspective, I can bring insight on any new technology. It's what my background's in. So I went to the All Things Open to kind of feel it out. I did an initial post on my first impressions of the conference, and I'm going to go ahead and cover different aspects, different speakers a little bit more in depth. I wanted to space out the content a little more as I get into syndication. So right now, my other podcast, Dad Strength, I was able to get it up on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn. I think I did it on SoundCloud, YouTube. There might be some other ones I'm missing, Google Play. And I'm going to do the same thing with the Socially Numb podcast here. So my idea is to use all these different sources to throw the podcast up. I cover some tech things. I'll talk about All Things Open right now, and we'll go from there. So if you have any ideas, let me know. This is a conference, so it's not as dated. So if you come into the show late, don't get discouraged thinking, I'm behind. Jump right in on the new episode. That's great. And if this is your first episode, sorry you had to listen to me babble about the show for the first 10 minutes. But here we go. The All Things Open conference. 2 days. The keynote speakers were pretty good. I showed up going downtown Raleigh for the convention. Never really been downtown Raleigh during a work day. And normally traffic on the weekend isn't too bad at all. I've been there for events, parades, anything like that, and I have never had trouble getting parking. And I didn't really have trouble getting parking for the convention. I did get in and they were only taking cash for the parking garage I went to, so that threw me off. But once I was able to get inside, I went up to the conference. It was held at the Raleigh Convention Center. I've never been in there. It's a pretty nice building. Not sure what all they use it for, but as I got in right on time. They had my name, but they didn't have a badge for me, so they gave me a marker and I wrote my name on it, which if you've ever been to a conference, a tech conference, they have like the QR code on it, so that as you go around the different booths, they scan your card and then they give you some type of like giveaway or freebie promotional material for their company. So I got a lot of stress relievers, but I'm pretty sure I did not get on their mailing list because I just had a generic QR code on my name tag since they didn't give me the real name tag. So once I got there, I got the fake name, the fake name tag that wasn't associated with my account, and I went around and talked to groups as they set up. I found that that's a little bit easier because if you go to a conference, try to get there early. You can talk to the booths as they set up and kind of see what they're about. And that might be before even their people get there. I talked to a couple different groups before their managers got there, or the salesmen or saleswomen that were going to be there to try to pitch their product to me. So it's a good way to get the materials. So like, hey, what does your group do? Oh, we handle emails for businesses, blah, blah, blah. Our sales manager will be here in a little bit. I'm just setting up, and then you just ask, hey, can I get some information on that? And they'll give it to you. And then you can miss a spiel that the manager's going to give you. So it's a good way to do it. That's what I did. I went around, I got a blow-up dinosaur for the Bronto email generator, and I talked to a couple different groups, some people from Microsoft. I'm trying to think who else was there. Some people from MySQL. There was a cool company from Colorado, which I'm blanking on the name, but they make custom Linux laptops. So that's interesting. If you know anything about Linux, it's an operating system that is made for the web. So it handles web processes a little bit better and faster than Microsoft. So like a Windows machine, and that's what most developers or programmers use. That's what I use. I have a Mac, so I kind of go back and forth. Mac runs Unix, which is sort of, you can get into the skeleton, the bones on that, but it's sort of related to Linux. They run the same commands. As a non-developer, that's all you need to know. If you're a developer, you know what I'm talking about. But it's sort of like that, so it's very similar. I can run the same commands on a Linux box as I can on a Mac. Generally, Mac I have to add some extra packages and make sure Xcode has the terminal commands installed. But that was cool. I entered to win in a drawing, and I don't think I did because I wasn't too sure. After all the speakers, they did a giveaway, but it wasn't really a door prize giveaway. It was kind of a guy standing on stage asking people to raise their hand if they were interested in things. and he was just picking at random, like, hey, who would want a book on this topic? People throw up their hands. He's like, you had your hand up first, or, oh, let's pick someone over here from this side. How about you? And it was pretty much a random choice from what I saw. So I skedaddled after that because I didn't want to sit there raising my hand while there were a couple hundred people trying to get free t-shirts and books. But the speakers generally are pretty good. I normally try to pick topics that I'm directly involved with, web programming, things like that, development, design, servers, big data, or companies themselves. Like, it was interesting to hear Microsoft talk about how they wanted to make JavaScript sort of an operating system where it was its own thing that lived in your system so that everyone had the same code base. Then you might be able to run JavaScript. And then they wanted to kind of get away from jQuery, it seemed. And then their developer made some snide comments that if you know jQuery, you're not really a developer and you really don't know JavaScript. So I thought that was interesting. That's basically what he implied. And I went to 2 Microsoft sessions, and they both said the same thing. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future with Microsoft's new browser Edge, as they are touting it as an energy saver. Maybe they're not letting machines run all these scripts with the built-in JavaScript. It would be a way to cut down. I do know that if you are worried about your privacy, JavaScript runs a lot of the tracking. So if there was a way to build in to the browser its own tracking or use HTML5 to run tracking, then JavaScript would pretty much be obsolete. I try to use it as little as possible because I know how slow it runs, and some mobile devices don't run it. And as a developer, you want to try to hit as many devices as possible. Where I find JavaScript has no equal is in doing interactions. And I don't try to do fancy animations or anything like that. I know CSS is starting to come around and offer some of those things, but I'm more worried about the accessibility because I want users who are handicapped or disabled to be able to interact with my website. And that's one of the things where if you do listen to the podcast and you like it, think about doing transcriptions. If you want to help out with that, that would be great. If you know anyone that does that as a service, please let me know. It's something that I'm going to look into as I post the videos on podcast or on YouTube, the podcast on YouTube. As videos, I don't know how they do the closed captioning, and that's something I'm going to look into because it would take me a while to record the podcast, get prepared for the podcast itself, and then come back and do my own transcriptions. And I feel like maybe one time or one day I can get that process down. But that is one of the reasons I do use JavaScript on the site, is I want it to be as available as possible. And so in the meantime, what I'm doing is I'm setting up pages for each podcast to help. If you are hearing impaired, you can't listen to the podcast, read through my notes. I'm going to try to be as thorough as possible. If you don't like sitting through the podcast, come to the site. Interact that way. I'm going to have comment forms run by Discuss on there to let people post comments, feedback, and things like that. So that's just getting back into it. I know that was one of the topics they covered. There was also an Apple reveal where they revealed the MacBook Pro with the touch bar. I have to do a little bit more research on that to see how that's going to be, because I'm not really sure how that's going to handle in the future. But overall, it was a good conference. A lot of web stuff. A lot of people talking about Bootstrap, trying to get away from it. I used the elements of Bootstrap on the Socially Numb website, sort of the grid, and then I broke out and deleted most of the JavaScript and the jQuery as much as I could on the site, keeping the keyboard navigation stuff that I feel is a necessity. And if browsers fix that for me, then no, I won't really have to run JavaScript. I know some of the tracking software, Google Analytics, uses JavaScript. So maybe if that can get baked into HTML5, great. Less worry as a developer, because I just want something that's standardized, that works. As browsers pick up HTML5 and CSS3, that handles most of the use cases that I can foresee in the future. And then I don't have to worry about it. So I have looked at doing like browser compatibility. They talked about some pre-processing compilers like for your CSS and things like that will add the extra classes for you. So you can write the clean code and then it goes in and adds everything for you. So that's something that you probably want to use. I use a version of that too. And all my code's out there. If you're interested on the tech side of things, you can look into it. I keep it open. So it's open to the public. But that's how I run the site. It's not hidden by any means. You can easily find the backbone to my site and see how I work on it and try to improve it any way that I can. But I did enjoy the conference. Some conferences are hit or miss. A decent amount of good speakers there. And if you're in tech, I encourage you to check it out. And you can read my in-depth review of that on the site. Now, as for gaming, oh man, Halloween weekend has come around, and as I bashed previously on Pokemon Go, it has come back to totally redeem itself as a game. I talked about the Pokemon Go thing not having any interest to draw me back in, and I hate harping on the game, but the developers went out for Pokemon Go on Halloween, and they did a Halloween special where any ghost, spooky Pokemon are now available like as an extra bonus. So as you play the game, I think there were 5 of them: Zubat, Meowth, Drowsy, Ghastly, and there's one more, I believe. Cubone. So those 5 and their evolved forms are more, you have a greater chance of finding them out in the wild for Halloween weekend. And so it was pretty cool. And they also gave you discounts on the steps and things like that. So you can earn extra candies and things like that as you play the game. And it was a pretty cool move by them. I did not see it promoted as much. They haven't been doing a lot of promotion on the game. I heard about it word of mouth. Checked it out as we went to our Halloween festival downtown, and it was pretty cool. So kudos to them. After I went on about how they couldn't get people to play the game, they went ahead and started to run these. And if they do it more often, people will play the game. Because I'm stuck at around 100 Pokemon, and as you don't see any Pokemon, the only way to get them now is with the buddy system that I talked about that they should add. They've had it in. I still think they should offer an extra leash that's still there. Make it so that you can uncover it just like the incubator or whatever. And you can walk multiple Pokemon at the same time and earn extra candy. Because that's what people either want to play the game to either collect all the Pokemon or to battle at gyms. And that's pretty much non-existent. Maybe if they let you battle friends, that would open up a whole new world. But that's it. Just wanted to mention it that they are making improvements to the game. I know it was a crazy craze for it over the summer, so I don't want to keep talking about it. It's not what this podcast is about. But I do want to talk about gaming on a budget this week and just getting into gaming as general as possible, something that people can come back to. And I'm going to start picking this up on the site and talking about kind of like as a news flash, like, hey, here's the new one of the free PlayStation games for the month, or hey, Steam's having a discount sale. Still thought about picking up an Xbox, but that depends on Microsoft's subscription, where they want you to pay $10 for Windows, I think for Enterprise, for user, which you know that is going to be trickled down to personal computers pretty soon. They just haven't made the announcement yet because of the backlash they would get. But they started it with Microsoft Office. They tried to do it for free. They kind of did it a little bit for students for free. Like, hey, you can get Microsoft Office. Then we're going to throw in like, hey, maybe we'll throw in OneDrive and make a paid version of what Google has been offering with Google Docs for free for years. So as a customer, as a consumer, why would I pay for something that a competitor offers for free? Microsoft Office is sort of outdated. If your company is built around Microsoft Office, they need some restructuring badly, because documents and keeping those files with the cloud now, like, what is your backup system on those? You have to have software. I know companies that have used outdated software to create documents and things, and the software is no longer around. So they have tons of data that they don't know what to do with. They're running old unsecured computers, running Windows XP, because that's the only program that they can use to load their documents, their files, their budgets, and things like that. And that's basically what Microsoft Office is becoming. Every 3 or 4 years, they upload it. They change the file format for some reason. They change the formatting. So then you have DOC, DOCX. You have different changes. Like, hey, this file cannot be opened with Microsoft Word 2013 or whatever. Do you want to convert it? And they want you to go ahead and just keep converting and updating your files. But as a large business, if you have a large business, you do a lot of document stuff, it's just not feasible anymore. Not with online file sharing and data storage. You can save encrypted files. Google Drive has their own. You could even set up your own for your company. Set up your own server, your own document server. There are open source servers out there that you can open your own files up. So that's where I don't know if I'm going to get into Xbox. That's the reason behind it. I think they're just going to a money thing. They put Windows 10 on the Xbox. I just don't feel comfortable with that if they're going to make it a subscription. And yeah, I know PlayStation you have to have PlayStation Plus to play online. And that is what I do, $50 or whatever for the year to get the free games. But I also get free games with them. And that's why I want to download them. And I'll write articles on them, give feedback, or bring them up on the podcast. And if you have a PlayStation 3 like I do, you even get more games for free. So you're just paying to play, yes, but you also get free games that I wouldn't have paid for in the first place, but it is giving me something. Just having a computer that I have to pay $10 to use, I don't see the point, because you can get a computer and run Linux on it for free. To do what? Connect to the internet? I just don't see how Microsoft offers anything that you can't get for no subscription. And if you think about it, that's where MacBooks and things like that, they've been getting the bum rap, because you have to pay more to get a MacBook. So it's more of an investment. And PCs are cheap. But not if you're planning on keeping your PC for a few years. What's going to happen if you're paying $10 a month for Microsoft Windows? That's $120 a year. How much is your computer going to cost? Are you still going to pay $800 for a computer that has decent specs, and then have to pay an extra $120 a year, plan on keeping it for 3 or 4 years, and you're sitting there looking at a MacBook that runs for $1,000 that you don't have to pay the extra $100 for, because it gives you free operating system updates? I just don't see how they're going to be able to cut it. Do they expect people to buy cheap computers with poor hardware? Probably not. And I mean, if the Xbox, until I can get something, I was excited to see that they were going to have Windows 10 on the Xbox, because I thought it'd be cool to go ahead and share like games between an actual computer tower setup, where I could play computer games that might need more processing power and better graphics on a tower, and share the same exact games back on an Xbox that I might be able to play casually, like some sports games, on my couch with a controller. But then they went the subscription route, and they don't know about all the games and which ones are supported, and they didn't open it up to Steam. If they would open up to Steam, I would get one. Just like I don't have a Steam powered box. There's no need for a Steam box, because I can play them on my computer. And if it's going to be a casual game, I'll get it on the PlayStation 4. A game that's not too intensive, like a shooter or something like that. Although I do have Doom on the PS4, just because of the Friends Network and playing online and things like that. So, the first game that I played on PlayStation Plus. So if you have PlayStation Plus, just to go into it first, they give you free games a month, 2 free games. And that's usually per system, I believe. So don't quote me on that because I don't know about the older systems. I do know, I think if you go on to like the PS4, it'll tell you like you can play this game for free this month and this game for free. Now how it works is as long as you have a subscription, you can play the games. I don't know how they're linked, but I do know that if you give up I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I canceled my subscription for a little bit as I moved and redid it, and I could still play some of the older games I had from before. So I think it marks as long as you have an active PlayStation Plus subscription. I think you can play any of the games that you got while you're PlayStation Plus. But to get the game, you only have a limited time to download it. So each month around the beginning, I want to say it's the 5th, and I could be wrong, but it's like October 5th to October 31st or something. You can download the games this month were Resident Evil on the PlayStation 4 and Transformers Devastation. And on the PlayStation 3, it was Datora, I think, and Badlands. So some of the games are pretty cool that they put out there. The remake of Resident Evil, that's pretty sweet. I started playing through that, and that's cool to get. So those are the kind of games you would get. And there's some other ones that I've gotten before. And as I play them, I'm going to talk about them. It's a cheap way to get games if you're already planning to play online. And I've stated before that I don't like to buy only AAA games when they come out. The latest would be Ninja Turtles, like Made in Manhattan. I grew up on the Ninja Turtles. I usually play most of the games, but they were selling a game at $60 or $50 when it came out. But it doesn't take that long to beat. So if it's going to be like a 6-hour game, why spend $60 on it for that much entertainment? I liken it to movies, where you can buy a movie for $10 and get entertained for 2 hours. So if you buy $20 for a game, it should be 4 hours long. That's usually what I do my comparison. And I look at, there's a site called How Long to Beat, and people go on there. I think it's all one word. howlongtobeat.com, and you can type in the name of a game and it will give you like a general guess based on user feedback of how long it will take you if you play it casually, if you play it hardcore or advanced. And I did notice that usually they're underestimates, so it might be how long it takes to beat if you play through a second time for a lot of the advanced stuff, because some of the games, like I know, like, hey, I'm pretty good with this format, so I can blow through it. And when I go through, it takes me a little bit longer. And then if I would play through it again, I would crush the average time. So I'm not really sure what the average time is based on. I guess it's just kind of user feedback, and you never know like how someone's keeping track of that. But it does kind of give you a good idea. Normally, if you would play through it twice, your first playthrough is a little bit longer, is what I found. Then your second play time will be a little bit shorter than the listed time on that site. But I use that as a gauge. So when I go in and I see a game that has a play time of 6 to 8 hours for $60, to me, that's not worth it. So when I say gaming on a budget, if I can get a really good deal, and I know Christmas is coming up, there are a lot of games out, and I'm playing games that are past, that have been out in the past. Like I know Red Dead Redemption, I got the first one. It's pretty cheap these days, and they just announced the second one. I played through the first one a little bit. I don't think I beat the game. And I like to beat all the games I buy just because it's an investment for me. So I don't see the point of buying a game and then not playing through it. So even if it's bad, I'll play it. I started to play through the free PlayStation games as I've been getting caught up on my game collection and what games I haven't beat. So I play through Datura. It's supposed to be an artsy game for the PlayStation Network, made by a Polish company. It's supposed to highlight the graphics of the PlayStation 3. And now, granted, now I do have a PlayStation 4. The game came out in 2012. I'm getting it as a free version 4 years down. So I could just be spoiled by the older graphics. But the graphics are not that great. I mean, other PS3 games, I'm comparing it to games like God of War and other games that are put out by Sony that you can get on like the Sony network. It just doesn't hold up. And the worst part of the game were the controls, which, as any gamer knows, that's a deadly sin to have the game not have tight controls. I guess it was made for the PlayStation Move, which I don't have because I just don't like supporting companies that take another company's idea and just rip it off, and that's it. And they did it half-assed. So you take a Wii, who took time, put together Wii Sports, went out there, it went crazy. So PlayStation throws out their PlayStation Move, and this was supposed to be one of their games that was a highlight to it. And I guess I used the standard PlayStation 3 controller and it worked for the game, but it was clunky. So I don't know if it was because I didn't use the Move controller, but what you are is you're a floating hand, and your character moves slow. I guess the floating hand would be what your Move controller would control around. But for my sake, I use the standard analog stick. So I had the left or right analog stick. I think I walked with the left, and so the hand moved with the right. And you would touch on things, and you have to press a button. And I'd press the button 2 or 3 times, and your hand moves really slow until you figure out what you're supposed to do. I had no background on the game going in, but wow, I haven't decided how I'm going to do like news releases of games, if I'm going to do like reviews, like how many stars I'm getting the game or thumbs up or what, but bare minimum. This game, if I was doing stars, it would be a 1 out of 5. Not good at all. I think it took me, I didn't play it straight through because your guy moves so slow that I had to take breaks. It was a frustrating experience because you would be sitting there trying to get, like there's a crowbar place where you break the glass, which first of all, when I went to get the crowbar, the game froze on me, which thankfully it saves your spot. Because even though I didn't save, I solved the puzzle. I guess they're puzzles. It wasn't really a puzzle. You're just kind of walking around exploring as the story like gives you flashbacks of what happened. And I'm still not really sure what happened. And I looked at some other reviews after I beat the game where it was like a great story and really great, like wrong. I've seen artsy things, and it's not something that I didn't get. It was just something that was just clunky overall in storytelling and in the game. If it was a little bit more intuitive, maybe it would have been cool. Have a little bit more interaction with some of the story. But as it was, I would not recommend the game. And I know that's me playing it for free. So I'm telling you, if you have a chance to download it for free, save yourself the struggle. I mean, unless you like playing challenging, I don't even want to say challenging, because it wasn't challenging, unless you want to play mind-numbing games. That's the only reason I would recommend it. But, I mean, I think it gave me trophies. Not that I really care about the trophies if you look at my gaming history, but it does give you something for free to do on the PlayStation. So if you don't have any games, if you beat all your games, you're all caught up, and you wanted something to try, it is a little bit different. I will say that. I think it would have been cool if your guy moved a little bit faster, almost like normal speed. It was kind of like he was in a trippy environment. But I'm going to put a full review out on it. I guess news release, but it's still going to be a little bit late since the site's still getting set up. But what I'm going to try to do is, when the games are released, give feedback on them, talk about which ones they put up. I don't know if they announce them ahead of time. I'm going to look into it. But that's the first one I played through, Datara. Haven't got into Badlands. It says Game of the Year, so we'll see how that one works out. And I have some other games that I'll go through. I haven't decided on what I'm going to do for the category and what games I'm going to talk about. But I know as of right now, I'm doing it from an independent perspective. So it's not typically going to be the big developer games, unless it's something that I'm really into. I mean, if there's something that listeners want me to play, or even if a listener wants to come in, give their own feedback, feel free, reach out to me. The only thing I ask is I want it to be uncensored. So your own opinion, and no press releases. You can't be affiliated with a company that you're reviewing a game for or recommending. I mean, if you're a company and you want to send a game out for me to play, feel free. But I will mention that and let everyone know, and it will be unbiased. So I will not let that take into account my review of the game. Because if you sent me data, I would tell you clunky handling. Maybe the PlayStation Move would have made it a little bit better. I don't know. I felt like I was a step too slow. If that was the intention of the game, the story, I mean, there are better ways you could execute a game like that. So that's it for the gaming side of things. And as I get more into a groove with some of the new categories and things like that, it'll be a little bit more of a fluid coverage on gaming. Some of the games I play, I'll just throw right on the site, and I might not mention them here on the podcast, but kind of go back and forth, and I hope you like the direction we're going with it. And now on to sports. Talked about the World Series, and it's tough for me to get into like live sports coverage on a podcast. I know how frustrating it is to be away for a week, miss an episode or two of a podcast, and then they're talking about something that happened in the past. And so I'm still working out some of the kinks on that, going through some other feedback, people I've talked to about coverage on the podcast, what I'm going to talk about. The World Series is a big deal, but as of right now, I don't know who the winner is going to be. It looks like the Cubs are going to take this game. Anything could happen in 2 more innings, but as of right now, the Cubs have a lead, and that's going to push the series to 3-2. It's going to go back to Cleveland, but I'm going to try to cover it from a different angle. And by a different angle, I mean I'm going to look into it from an analytic perspective and go into some of the more tech things, what I see, something that's general, and hopefully people can come back in time. And I might give lively reports on the sports, but that will pretty much just be blurbs that I put on the site itself, kind of as like news releases where, hey, I might give a rundown of each of the games I watch. I don't like covering things I don't see, so it's going to be tough for me to cover everything. And so I might do a highlighted complete breakdown of games. I thought about doing that. Or like weekly rankings, so that if you go listen, I know it's not going to be 100% up to date, but I want it to be something that anyone could pop in, pick up on, and understand where I'm coming from. And I know with sports, it's tough. That's why I put it at the end. So if you want to listen to some of the tech updates, my feelings on that, and then drop off for the sports, great, go ahead. Same with gaming. Anyone can pick up data. I think they sell it, even though it might not be for free on the PlayStation end of things. And sports is going to be a little bit different on that, but I would like to keep it connected. And so for that, I'm going to keep the podcast going. Same format. I think it works. The people have been pretty positive with it. And I'm just going to try to tweak it a little bit, where I'm not giving a rundown of complete rankings or things like that. I'll throw stuff up on my site. So if there's ideas you want, let me know. We could do focus more on players, more on stats, more on teams themselves, or leagues as a whole. I thought about doing conferences or something for college, where right now rankings on like the top team from each conference, where would it be? Because let's be honest, the other teams don't matter. So right now you have the SEC, the leader is Alabama. So you have Alabama up against, from the ACC, Clemson. Clemson just beat Florida State. So they're still undefeated. The first playoff ranking comes out this week, so we'll see if the committee agrees. And this isn't my order yet. So the Pac-12 has Washington. They're undefeated, top team. And the Big Ten has Michigan. They're still undefeated. And right now, those are the 4 conferences. The Big 12 has a mess. They have Oklahoma, looks like, as their top team, I believe, in the standings. And they've already lost to Ohio State. And it'd be a different story if Ohio State was the first team in their conference. Or Houston. Oklahoma also lost to Houston, who now has a couple losses on their resume. And that puts them in a very poor position. And I would have to say, barring a couple teams losing a crazy upset in a conference final by like a 3-loss, 4-loss team, where that team wins the division or the conference after they won their division, I would have to say that the Big 12 is out of the playoffs. Some people say that doesn't matter, whatever. They might, Oklahoma, 2-loss Oklahoma, though, might be in the discussion. It depends on how the committee views conference championships. If a conference champion from another conference has 3 or 4 losses because they upset one of the 4 teams I mentioned. So that's where it would come back around, and we don't know because we haven't seen that scenario play out. The playoffs only been around for 2 years, so whenever you have that short set, a limited set of data, you don't have the case studies where, hey, Louisville right now looks like they're going to run the table and have 1 loss. Clemson's undefeated. What if Clemson gets into the championship game and they play a 3-loss team from the other division and they lose? Then you have Clemson at 1 loss, Louisville at 1 loss, and then the ACC champion, which may have 3 losses. I think everyone on their side already has 2. And there's still a month to play, and I think they cross paths with some of the other teams. So those teams, let's say it shakes out even a 2-loss team. That 2-loss team beats Clemson. Clemson and Louisville both have 1 loss. The 2-loss teams there. Oklahoma also has 2 losses. They're from the other conference, but they're conference champion. Does Oklahoma get in over those other 1-loss teams? I don't know if they do, and that's what the committee's going to decide, and we'll kind of see whenever their rankings first come out. And with that, some of the sports stuff, I'm starting to get more into social media, trying to get that set up completely and getting some more data put out there. And it's a quicker way. If you follow me on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, and we have the podcast on, and the site as a whole on Google Plus, and maybe Tumblr. I think I put it on there, and a couple other things, which I'll plug once I get everything completely up and running. But that's the quickest way for me to talk about sports, and that's mainly where I talk sports. The site itself, the podcast, might be gearing a little bit more towards tech and some other sports things, but podcasting is just hard to cover sports unless I put it out every day. And so I'm not 100% sure. Going forward, I'm still going to talk about it on the podcast, but I don't know what level of coverage I'm going to give it. The other big sporting event I watched over the last week were the MLS playoffs, Major League Soccer. The most surprising thing to me was that I was able to get the game for free, no cable subscription, over the air with an antenna on Univision. I can't even get basketball playoff games over the air. You have to have a cable subscription. I can't watch hockey playoff games. Baseball, most of the time we're on TBS. And this is where the leagues are going to have to make a decision. If you want people to watch the games, their brands grew because they were available. Now they're not. The World Series, I believe, I could be wrong, there might have been 2 or 3 games that were on the actual cable, public channels. But I believe that that's it for baseball. The only playoffs I could see were the World Series on my channel without cable. And I don't pay for cable because I don't watch TV that often. I only watch sports, and I can watch that anywhere. So, and you can, if you're into ESPN or whatever, you can buy a streaming package now through Sling TV, or if you're into the PlayStation View, which, yeah, I know. Hey, that is cable, but pay for your streaming. It's a little bit different. You don't get as many channels as you would if you get the packages. But what I'm saying, when I focus on sports, I look at it from an exposure perspective. And now you have these teams that don't get the exposure. If I'm a local guy, I used to be able to watch on my local channel the local team. Growing up in Pennsylvania, the Steelers were always on, and Penn State were always on, the Eagles were always on the local channels. It was like 3 or 4, I remember, back in the day on the old TV. And it would have local coverage from the local town that I grew up in. and they would have their own talk shows on the sports show. And then cable evolved. And then there was a Pittsburgh sports show that did the same exact coverage. You could watch Pitt, Penn State highlights. You could see the coach shows. They also went into all the local teams. But now it seems like the local channels got cut off. They don't have the same coverage. Their local sports highlights are like 3-minute segments where they talk about high school teams, maybe a college team in the area, and then boom. Then they have the last little bit for pro teams for the area where they're like, hey, yeah, the Steelers won, which most people that are into sports, they already know that because they can get it on the internet. And now you have teams that aren't getting exposed. So the champions sell most of the merch, the best players, because they're in the commercials. Those are the ones that people see. But do they actually watch the games? No, because they don't know when they're on, what channels they're on, and where to find them. And I think that could be where MLS grows. I kept seeing over the past couple of years how lacrosse was going to grow and become more widespread and more of a national sport. But it's not. It doesn't have the backing. You can't find games on TV. You can't. Not over the air like MLS. So if Univision wants to step in and get soccer and on their channel, great. Because I think it's going to grow the sport. It might not reach the level of the Premier League ever. But it could grow fairly big from an audience perspective in the United States. Just because as more people are cutting cable, they're going to want to watch sports. They want to watch live shows. Even if it's soccer, a different sport, it doesn't matter. People will find it. And I think that's going to come around. So I might start looking into data on that. I did think that was interesting. And the NFL games, they had another one in London. At least it was a good game this time. The Bengals and the Redskins, I believe they tied. But their normal Sunday matchups are awful picks. They have teams that no one cares about playing early in the morning. And most of the time, I don't even know. So they need to decide what they want to do. Their rankings are dropping, but they don't have a set plan. Rankings are dropping in the NFL, but they're spreading out their product. Where they have games Thursday night, Sunday morning, and when college is over, they also have them Saturday. So what time slot is the NFL? It used to be only Sunday. You would get up, know that the game was either at 1. I could predict when the Steelers were playing because they always played at 1 on CBS. And I knew exactly when they were going to play. CBS had the AFL contract, AFC, I guess, from the AFL teams. They had the AFC contract, so they would play the Steelers. They were the local team, and most of their games were set up at 1 o'clock, unless they played Sunday night or Monday night. That was it. I knew when the Steelers played, when they played at home. Now, if they went out West Coast or played like a National League team, the Cowboys, they might have the primetime slot in the afternoon at 4 on Fox. But it wasn't that big of a guessing game. And I'm pretty sure they did it for the Steelers because then the Eagles were always on at 4. So in Pennsylvania, you could watch both teams if you really wanted to growing up. Now, I don't know so much anymore if that happens. And that's when the NFL needs to decide, like, hey, it's not so much watering down the product because it's the same teams, but not having the teams matter because they still have, they don't have the parity. I don't know if it's the coaches, because some coaches always have great teams like Bill Belichick. It could be the quarterbacks, though, like Tom Brady. Him and Belichick have been there and have the same run pretty much. Peyton Manning, it didn't seem like wherever he was always winning. But it might have been a thing for him where he was just winning because that's the environment he was at. He knew how to pick teams. I don't know, but some teams always lose. And that's where I'm going to be bringing in my salary analysis. Maybe even with the salary cap, some of these losing teams aren't paying their share. But I don't know. I'm going to look into the numbers. It looks that way for baseball so far. I'm going to start putting it up there. I know for NFL, I didn't really talk sports scores. I talked about the dropping ratings. That's where I seem the podcast can really take off for sports and the direction that it's going to go. And if you want live time picks, spreads and things like that, go to the site. I'll put it on there, and I think that'll be better. And we can even track it. If I do start to do picks, track what my record is. Might be awful. Most people have awful records picking teams. That's just how it goes. And maybe I'll put it on the homepage as a feature. I don't know. But that's where we're settling in. I think things are moving along. Going to get some syndication started. Going to get out in some other publications. Get some things rolling. If you have any feedback, want to be a contributor, reach out to me. Let me know. If there's anything else you can do to help, you want to spread the news, tell some friends about it, and get us out there. I'll start to pick up. The Dad Strength is out there too. I do both podcasts. I don't know if we're going to launch any more podcasts, but these are going to be the only two that I run. They fit my schedule, and that's pretty much it. I might bring in some other ones where I talked about breaking into sports. I've talked to some other people about doing podcasts. I don't know yet. I just don't want the overhead doing it myself, and I don't know if I can find anyone else to put their thoughts up consistently. But we'll see where it goes. So let me know. Reach out to me. Listen back next week. You've been listening to Socially Numb with Richie Leahy.